What does God say about global warming? Great question. Well, first of all, let me say that I'm not here to tell you whether or not climate change is true or whether it's false. It's not my job to tell you that because the Bible doesn't say one way or the other. So keep that in mind right from the start. It's very important to remember. When we think about climate change, global warming as Christians, first of all, on one hand, we're going to remember what God promised in Genesis chapter 8 after the flood, when he promises that seasons will always continue, springtime and harvest will always happen as long as the earth exists. And so we trust that God will keep this promise and that things will never get so bad that there are no more seasons or that the earth is destroyed by a flood or something like that. Right? So on the one hand, we trust God and his promises. However, a weird thing has kind of happened where a lot of Christians, for some reason, seem to think that anyone who believes that global warming might be true must not only be not a Christian, but they must be an atheist who doesn't trust in God at all. As if somehow someone who thinks the climate might be changing believes that God doesn't exist or that he's not in control. That's going too far. Right? The Bible never tells us that the climate won't change or get warmer. If anything, you could look at some of the things that God says will happen at the end of the world, specifically an increase in natural disasters and famines, widespread famines, and you could look at those things and say, well, that could potentially be caused by global warming. It wouldn't have to be, but it could be. Right, so here's what it comes down to. God doesn't tell us whether or not global warming is true. And that means we can have our opinions about it, right? Based on what scientists say, based on what we observe. We can have either opinion, right? Because God doesn't say. But what we have to make sure doesn't happen is that whichever side we're on, whichever opinion you hold, that you don't hold to it with the same strength as you would your religious beliefs. In other words, if you think climate change is true, if you think climate change is false, and you say, I have to believe this, anyone who believes the other side must be wrong, has to be wrong. If you believe that climate change is either true or false as strongly as you believe that, say, Jesus rose from the dead, or that your sins are forgiven, well, that's too far, because the Bible never says whether or not global warming is a thing. And so this would be a case then where our politics can get intermixed with our religion, with what God tells us. And that's a super, super dangerous thing for Christians, for the church, and we're seeing all kinds of problems with that in our world when there's that mixture. So that would be my recommendation is whichever side you are on, keep an open mind. Don't hold to your side and think that's the only possible side and everyone else must be not a Christian or they must be misreading the Bible or something. Again, the Bible doesn't tell us which of those things is true. The other thing that maybe plays into this a little bit would be human suffering. Last year I did one of these videos about the environment and taking care of it, and so you say a lot of the same things, right? You trust in God, that he'll take care of you. But someone watched that video and pointed out, one thing that you didn't talk about, which was right, I didn't talk about it, was the element of human suffering. Right, which as Christians, we're very concerned about human suffering and we want to eliminate it if at all possible as much as we can. And so if someone says to us, here are some things that we are doing that might be causing suffering for people in certain parts of the world or in future generations, or anything like that, at the very least, we want to hear it out, right? Because we're concerned about human suffering and we care about other people. Again, we just want to hear it out. I'm not saying which side you have to be on. I'm not saying which side I'm on. I'm just saying this is what we have to say as Christians, that God doesn't tell us whether or not it's true. And so it's simply impossible for us to 100% say with certainty either thing is the case. So I hope that answers some of your questions about climate change and global warming. God bless your day.